Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. And today we are going to be talking about the Memphis Tigers. We're going to be talking about Penny Hardaway. So who else would I bring on other than Memphis's own John Martin? John, you lost literally everybody except for someone named Nick Jourdain, who I don't even know. I had to Google him to figure out like who he was and what position he played and how many points he averaged. So
Yeah.
when you are rebuilding an entire roster outside of everyone not named Nick Jourdain, and you don't really land any of these like big name transfers, tell me why. Give me a reason right now as an outside observer to be excited about Memphis basketball in the 24-25 season.
Penny's own son transferred. His own son, Ashton, transferred. That's a rough offseason. That's a rough offseason. And by the way, I do want to stipulate just for this upcoming season of Field of 68 content, I actually identify as an Arkansas Razorback. So I would like it if you refer to me as can you respect my pronoun? Arkansas Razorback. Thank you. No, listen, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to make a bull case, as they say, for Memphis this year. It's a second straight year of returning 10% or fewer minutes from the prior year. Now, look, as you know, sometimes in college basketball, you're just going to have to turn your roster over. It's going to happen. You're going to hit a point where guys are graduating, guys are going to the draft. It happens. But it's happening a little too often, I would say, in the case of Memphis. And I think it was Evan Mia that had a nice piece about this over the summer. Like, yeah, everybody's losing kids at the portal. You know what I mean? Like that's not a rarity. It happens every other day. But it's the programs that lose too many to the portal, that replace with too many from the portal, that have a hard time. I believe there's only one team that's returned 15% or fewer minutes from the year before in the age of the portal and made the tournament the next season. That was Iowa State in 21-22, and I think they went to the Sweet 16. So it's only happened once, and it's never happened when that number is 10% or fewer. So that's what you're dealing with Memphis. The players are good. I mean, in a vacuum, individually, they're good players. They're not like they're Division II guys, but the challenge is flipping the entire roster, establishing roles, which has been I would say blind spot of Penny Hardaway over the years.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say you've had me on your show enough, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I think it's fair to say that I've been a Penny defender, a Penny
Yes,
supporter, right?
definitely,
Um,
definitely.
and I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, well, should I be a Penny supporter here? Like, I think what made me bullish on him, he went 3 years before he made the tournament, right? And the reason why I was like, well, you got to give this guy a shot is because he had a team that was peaking in 2020 and the tournament got canceled. In 2021, they were an NCAA tournament caliber team that just so happened to run into a situation where that was the year they had two buzzer beating losses to
Yeah,
Houston.
they had to beat Houston once and they couldn't. Yeah,
Yeah, and they had it was the weird COVID schedule. They missed out on a couple of games that they could have
correct.
had. They could have
Yeah,
won. Like it was just
Houston didn't make the game up. That was the
yeah.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah, so they that was you get a pass on that year. They were a top 30
yep.
team in America that year. You get a pass not making the tournament. It was weird. It was COVID. 2022, Amani Bates, Jalen Duren, terrible start to the season. He benches the superstar that you brought in and finds a way to get it done and comes within like 5 minutes of beating Gonzaga in the second round to make to the Sweet 16, right? And then in 2023, they were a top 20 team in America and were as you will put it, a bad call away from picking off Final Four contender FAU, which would have, I'm sorry, yeah, would have
Yeah, it
got
was
past
FAU.
FAU, and they would have got FDU. I get my
That's
FUs
correct. Yes,
confused, John. I get
yes.
my FUs confused. So they weren't that far away. A couple bad breaks, but like you could have had a run in one of those seasons right there. And then
Yeah,
last
and
year,
they started 15-2 last season.
and then last
Last
year the
season,
bottom fell out. Like it was uh from the outside, it felt like one of those situations where like guys just weren't getting along.
mm-hmm.
We talked about this in a different video, but like too many cooks in the kitchen. Players
Yep,
were promised one thing, then you bring in a guy in the middle of the season, and he starts taking shots and taking
exactly.
minutes, and it gets people mad. And it just the whole concept that I had was like he finds a way to make these rosters work, and then you have one of his more talented rosters, and the bottom completely falls out. I don't think it's coincidence that the next year he cleans house and he tries to start all over again, but That's not an easy thing to do. So that's a long-winded way of saying, like, I think this is a very important year for Penny to kind of prove what he is as a coach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just players, by the way. He's changed his staff entirely. I mean, from the like he's basically like ripped the carpet out. In a sense. I mean, he's replaced multiple assistants, multiple support people. His director of basketball ops is gone. He brought in Mike Davis, former Detroit Mercy, Indiana UAB coach, as a consultant who might be moved to assistant. We'll see. He demoted Faraji Phillips from assistant to support staff. So he's basically changed everything. And maybe look, that season and that collapse left such a stench that he had no choice but to do that. It does feel a little extreme though, and it's also, I think, fair to wonder where in a season as pivotal as you said, and I agree for a lot of reasons. Where is what is your culture, right? So much turnover, so little stability. You're the only constant. It just seems very difficult to get results when the program just sort of feels like it's flying by the seat of its pants every single year, and I think that's the part that Penny's going to have to answer. Again, he's got good players and we'll get to the roster, but it just seems like a tall task that he's kind of self-inflicting on himself.
Yeah, one, I absolutely agree with everything that you just said about the how hard it is, and I also understand why you would like make a lot of those changes after everything that kind of like you. There was no culture there by the end of it was all
Right.
the culture was what needed to have the house cleaned. So I get the process and I kind of understand why he did what he did, but man, you're taking a big risk here. So let's talk about this roster. Let's talk about what they got, and let's talk about the expectations for this group. I really like PJ Haggerty. He was a redshirt freshman at Tulsa, right? And
Yes.
averaged like 22 and 4 assists. Really talented dude. And you're combining him with Tyrese Hunter from Texas, formerly Iowa State, and Colby Rogers, who is a scorer and a sharpshooter from Wichita State. And you give me those three in a backcourt, that's a pretty good place to start. I like
Yep.
Dane Danger. I'm a little bit worried about Dane Danger being a full-time 5 man, but I like him. He also has one of the greatest nicknames, Welcome to the Danger Zone, right? And the kid from SMU, Tyreek Smith with Nick
Yeah.
Jourdain. Like I get all the pieces. I see what you're doing there. The George Mason kid, I think, has a high ceiling too. Um, I'm blanking on
Okoji.
his name. Okoji, yeah,
Baraka Okoji. Yep.
Baraka Okoji. So like I get what he's doing there, but I think you're gonna have to. You're basically betting on your backcourt to be absolute studs this season. I don't know if
Exactly.
they are.
Yeah. He was, a lot of this is informed by he was betting on the return of David Jones, which did not happen. David Jones stayed in the draft. The DePaul and St. John's transfer, who was great last year for them, at least offensively. He was sort of saying the whole time he believed David Jones would be back 70-30, and David Jones did not come back. And it just left. And this was obviously in what, June? So by then, you're only picking from the other guys that have withdrawn from the draft and transferred. And by the way, everybody else in the country wants those guys too. We were talking about Trayvon Brazile, Arthur Kalumba, Jameer Watkins, those type of guys. So then you're stuck with sort of what you have, which again, I think it's good. I think it's good, but I am not as high on PJ Haggerty as the rest of my peers are, I think. And I think that's probably what really informs my cynicism generally about Memphis this year. PJ Haggerty was a dynamic scorer for Tulsa. Tulsa sucked. I watched him lose to Little Rock. The only Power 5 team they played, and I'm going to use that term loosely, was Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma in that game against Oklahoma State, PJ Haggerty was, I think he shot 33%, had 14 points on 33% shooting. Doesn't give me excitement because Memphis is in Maui. They're in the Maui field. They're playing Clemson. They're doing return games against Virginia. They're playing Mississippi State. They're playing a damn loaded non-conference schedule, which ain't going to wait on you, okay, to adjust. So I like Danger, as you said, Power 5 experience. Tyrese Hunter, Power 5 experience as the third or fourth option for Texas last year. I could see him coming here and lighting it up in the AAC. But it ain't about the AAC. It's about what are you going to do in that non-conference. It's going to build a case for you to make the tournament. And that's what I am absolutely uncertain of.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. Yep. All right. Give me your best case scenario for them and kind of where your expectations are. Cause I think that this is another situation where, like, if they get in the tournament, this season would be an unmitigated success. I think that's going to be a tough hill for them to climb this year.
Yeah, I think the expectation at this stage in Penny's career should be to finally win the AAC regular season. I think they'll be co-favorites. It's never happened, Rob. Penny has never won the AAC regular season. Now, Houston existed, we know that, but Houston didn't exist last year, and they still did not get it done. South Florida was the champion in the AAC last year. It's time for Memphis to take its claim as the best in the AAC. I think success is maybe I'll say this: best case is making the tournament. That's the best case scenario, and maybe winning a game. But my expectations are that this team, based on, if we're going to use history as our guide and just what we know about flipping rosters, I think the expectation should be to miss the tournament. That's my expectation. I hope they surpass it, but my expectation is that they don't get in, they fall a little short.
Yeah. I'm kind of there with you as well, which is why when I'm grading their off season, I am giving them a D. I'm not going to go D minus. I don't think you should give them a D minus, but I'm giving them a D.
Because is that the worst grade of the off season so far?
In the one, no, it's not. There's
okay. Well, okay.
There are others that can be worse.
Hey, you didn't have the worst offseason, Memphis.
But I'm giving them a D for a bunch of different reasons. You had to clean house. You had all the changeovers in the staff. You didn't get any of the big name transfers that you wanted. And the guy that you were kind of banking on being your savior decided that he's going to go pro for, did he end up, I think he got a 2-way, right? David Jones? He didn't even get a guaranteed contract. So
the Sixers, yep.
Yeah. So like, that's just, you're in a situation where you have a roster that I don't even know if I would pick them to be the favorite in the American right now. Like, I've done zero research on that at this point. I've just kind of looked at Memphis, and I know what FAU is going to end up being. And I know that the South Florida lost like all their dudes, but even so, it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. We're going to have to see it before I believe.
I think they'll be co-favorites with UAB. That is my guess. They'll be preseason co-favorites with UAB's bringing back Luxembourg. And he was obviously a huge player for them last year. So my guess is they'll be co-favorites. I'll be a little more lenient than you were on the grading, just because they did get, Kobe Rogers was a guy that was recruited by Kansas and Alabama. Tyrese Hunter, we know, was a big time player at Texas. Dane Danger, Illinois. These are Power 5 type guys. So I will give them a C. I'm going to give them a C, but is a C good enough for where this program should be this far into Penny's tenure? I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, I think John just went soft there, guys, because he wants to make sure that he doesn't get kicked out of all Memphis Tigers future games, even though he is currently a Hog.
It's amazing you think I'm welcome there still.
We got to get you a John Calipari bobblehead. So.
That's right. I'm a razor back, baby.
Call it. Hey, end it. Call the Hogs.
Woo! Hey, Suey, Razorbacks, let's go!